Steam Winter Sale 2025 is a beast. There are tons of amazing games with amazing deals. So today I'll share 20 great games that cost $10 or less in which you must buy. Let's check it out. So let's start out with Bayonetta. Bayonetta originally was $20, but with a 70% discount it is now only $6. Bayonetta is a renowned fast-paced hack-and-slash game with chaotic battles as well as where you can just go around and fight hordes of enemies with no mercy whatsoever, and where in the meantime collect all the different kind of rings and whatnot, and where you also need to work your brain to solve different puzzles in order to progress in the game, as some parts may not be direct and they don't really show clearly about objectives of where to go and whatnot, so you have to really work your brain to try to figure out and just poke around and whatnot. That is just something that is really cool. But anyways, as far as Bayonetta goes, you play as Bayonetta, the last survivor of the witch clan, and where you must fight against angelic beings, and whereas you play and accompany her on her journey, you get to witness her protecting herself and the world around her. What's cool about Bayonetta is that the missions are actually divided into what they call verses, in which the verses works as segments of a chapter, and where when you complete each verse, you are actually graded by how well you complete the segment through a given medal. Like for instance, if you do it really well, you could get a platinum. If you do it not so well, you could get a gold, just as a few examples as far as the way that Bayonetta is graded. But anyways, if all that sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Bayonetta on the Steam Deck. Once again, Bayonetta originally was $20, but with a 70% discount, it is now only $6. Now up next is Halo the Masterchief Collection. Halo the Masterchief Collection originally was $40, but with a 75% discount, it is now $10. Halo Masterchief Collection is 6 for the price of 1, baby, where it includes 6 classic Halo games. Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, Halo Reach, Halo 2 Anniversary, Halo 3, Halo 3 ODST, as well as Halo 4. What I really love about Halo Master Chief Collection is that it is just really iconic. It just brings back the vibes of the classic games that I enjoy back in the day. Those really fun first-person shooter games that just brings about all these different types of memories. Halo Master Chief Collection, in my opinion, they are also the best games in the Halo franchise. They just basically identify what the Halo games ought to be. So the major thing is that if you are somebody who is a long-time Halo fan, you must check out Halo Master Chief Collection. If you are somebody who just wants to kind of hop into the Halo franchise, you must check out the Halo Master Chief Collection. It is just something in which it is just so mind-blowing, so amazing, and where it's really great to be able to play on the Steam Deck and play on the go whenever possible. Now up next is Persona 4 Golden. Persona 4 Golden originally was $20, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $10. Persona 4 Golden is a turn-based RPG game about a high school protagonist who moves into a countryside town of a fictional Japanese city called Inaba, where he meets new friends while solving the mysteries of various murder cases in town, with the privilege of both interacting with the real world as well as entering into the cognitive realm through a TV, and fighting all the way to the end in the form of their personas, which resemble the name of the series but also the avatars reflecting on each individual, and are activated only when entering the TV and fighting and exploring various dungeons. The key is to fight and level up the various personas of each character to grant more skills, in which you will become stronger and buffer and whatnot in order to tackle more enemies in the games, in the dungeons and stuff. What's cool is that Persona 4 Golden perfectly blends turn-based RPG with high school life simulation games, as in between those various deadlines in which you have to go into the TV to enter those different dungeons to tackle the dangers and whatnot to save a shadow out of those different dungeons, is that in between those different deadlines, they get to form different bonds with others as well as participate in various classes. As well as what I love about Persona 4 Golden is they're prioritizing their story arcs in the different bonds that they form, you know, because the thing is that when you form those different bonds, not only do they help in making you stronger and better prepared to face whatever danger lies ahead in those various dungeons and stuff. But also, what's cool about those bonds is that there are also these unique story arcs in those different characters about the different things that they face, those different challenges, and where you play as the protagonist and you bring hope to them, bring encouragement to them. So those kind of spawns, those story arcs, I believe that it is something that's definitely worth checking out. It just brings so much spice into the story of Persona 4 Golden. So yeah, if you really love these type of turn-based RPG games where there is a rich story in which there are these different interesting characters, in which there is so much to do, and where you get to learn so much about those different stories, those things that captivate you and also teach you in how to become a better leader, definitely check out Persona 4 Golden on the Steam Deck. Once again, Persona 4 Golden originally was $20, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $10. Now up next is Watch Dogs 2. Watch Dogs 2 originally was $50, but with a whooping 90% discount, it is now only $5. In this game, you get to play as Marcus, a young hacker who takes down shady and corrupt organizations throughout parts of a fictionalized Bay Area in California. This game specifically features iconic locations like San Francisco, Oakland, Marin County, and the Silicon Valley. You can travel by foot, travel by car, travel by buses, travel by trucks, motorbikes, you name it, as well as you get to engage in firearm fights also while driving. What I really love about Watch Dogs 2 is that there are various ways to approach those different missions, whether you want to approach it aggressively or in stealth mode. They both bring a really thrilling experience. As far as the aggressive approach goes, you get to engage in combat itself using a variety of melee and firearm weapons created from a 3D printer. As far as the stealth approach goes, you also get to use a variety of things such as paralyzing enemies with your taser or secretly using drones. Now, as far as the game goes, since it is an open world game, aside from the main missions and side missions, there are also a variety of things to do in this vast fictionalized Bay Area where you can street race, you can engage in street art activities, drone racing, and many more. So yeah, if you are looking for an open world game that's really engaging, really fun, as well as you really love the vibes of the Bay Area like me who grew up in the Bay Area, it kind of hits home to me a lot, then definitely check out Watch Dogs 2 on the Steam Deck. And just as a side note, Watch Dogs 2, like GTA 5, it is listed as unsupported because the multiplayer side of things also doesn't work. So just as a side note, but as far as the game goes, it all runs properly. So yeah, if all this sounds interesting to you, definitely check out Watch Dogs 2 on the Steam Deck. Once again, Watch Dogs 2 originally was $50, but with a 90% discount, it is now only $5. Now up next is Ori and the Blind Forest. Ori and the Blind Forest originally was $20, but with a whooping 75% discount, it is now only $5. Ori and the Blind Forest is a Metroidvania platformer game where you get to play as Ori, a spirit guardian who is on this mission to revive a withered forest by restoring the three elements of light. What I really love about Ori and the Blind Forest is the beautiful world to platform, as well as there are also those different secret areas that you can discover. Also on top of that, there is an emotional story that brings tears to my eyes, as well as a beautiful soundtrack to bring all that awesomeness together. It's just really cool, really fun, and the music, I will say this, is that very few games, in my opinion, have better music than Ori and the Blind Forest. They are those type of music in which I will find myself to be playing them regularly, even when I'm not playing the game or when I'm with other friends. Even friends where they are not in a good mood, they will ask me at times, can we play some music from Ori, Joe? The soundtrack is just really top notch. It not only brings the mood and vibe of the game together, but it also is just really relaxing that you will potentially want to play them not only when playing the game, but also outside, as the music can be quite addicting as well. But anyways, if you love these type of beautiful platforming games where there is just an emotional story, as well as you love these type of games where it is also not that challenging as well, because I understand that for some people, they will get turned off by platformer games because some platforming games are just really challenging. But Ori and the Blind Forest, I feel like it is a good start to get get into even the platforming genre. There are parts where it is just a bit tricky, but at the same time, it is also not overwhelmingly hard. So yeah, if you really also love these type of platformers that is also not that hard, but at the same time also fun and emotional as well, definitely check out Ori and the Blind Forest on the Steam Deck. Once again, Ori and the Blind Forest originally was $20, but with a 75% discount, it is now only $5. Now up next is Fallout 4. Fallout 4, you can choose between whether you want to get the base game or you want to go with the Game of the Year edition, where the base game originally cost $20, but with a 60% discount, it is now only $8. Now as far as the Game of the Year edition goes, it includes the base game as well as all 6 official DLCs, in which the Game of the Year edition originally cost $40, but with a whooping 75% discount, it is now only $10. Fallout 4, it is an open world futuristic game set in the year 2287 around Boston, Massachusetts area, aka the Commonwealth. Now as far as Fallout 4 goes, there are plenty of weapons in the game that you can mod and customize, in which you can take down various enemies that are featured in the game. As well as in Fallout 4, you can also build various settlements in which you'll be able to take charge of. So yeah, it is a really engaging open world game that I highly recommend on the Steam Deck. Once again, Fallout 4, you can choose between whether you want to go with the base game or the Game of the Year edition, in which the base game originally cost $20, but with 60% discount, it is now only $8. Now as far as the Game of the Year edition, it was originally $40, but with 75% discount, it is now only $10. So yeah, if you're somebody who is a big Fallout fan and you don't want to miss out, then definitely check out Fallout 4 Game of the Year edition. It only costs $2 more than the base game. Now up next is Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice. Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice originally was $30, but with a 75% discount, it is now only $7.49. Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice is a beautiful action-adventure, story-rich game set in a dark fantasy world with Norse mythology lore to it. In this game, you get to play as Senua, a picked warrior who has to travel to Helheim in order to rescue the soul of her significant other from the goddess. Now, throughout the journey, there are various puzzles to solve in which you really gotta pay attention to every bit and piece of the specific puzzles in order to solve, as you really have to hone in at every hair of the grass, as well as pay attention and look carefully at the surroundings, maybe turn the angle and whatnot. You have to do all that in order to solve various puzzles, because some of the puzzles can be a bit tricky if you are not good at paying attention to the surroundings, and the puzzles oftentimes involve matching specific symbols that are found throughout the game to open a specific gate, as well as, fixing those different bridges in order to progress in the game. As well as talking about the action side of things, there are plenty of enemies to fight in which they can come unexpectedly in an area in which you are about to solve a specific puzzle. They can come unexpectedly, in which it is really fun and really awesome, really submersive as I engage in those various combat scenarios in melee fashion. But what I am really the most impressed with Ninja Theory with creating Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice is them really taking the effort to raise awareness of the struggle of psychosis. Because as far as Senua, the main character that you play as, as you go about and assist her on her journey, you will be able to experience what it's like to be someone who has psychosis, and where you will be able to experience a voice narrator who basically throughout the game will speaking in those voices that sound like hallucinations as you go about, whether it is fighting those different enemies, whether it is solving various puzzles, or even just roaming around and continuing on with the story. It just really feels so submersive, and I'm really thankful that Ninja Theory took the time to go above and beyond to not just, imitate other games that have characters with disabled characters, but they also go above and beyond to do the research to make Hellblade to depict psychosis as accurate as possible. So that is something that's just really cool, and is a really great action-adventure masterpiece in my opinion. And as somebody who has autism and somebody who has a high respect for the special needs population, this game is just something in which I cannot cannot ignore. It is just so awesome and so touching to me. So yeah, if all that sounds interesting to you, if you love action-adventure games where there is a deep lore to it, as well as there are plenty of enemies to fight, as well as you love these games that depict disabled characters to its finest, definitely check out Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice on the Steam Deck. Once again, Hellblade: Senua Sacrifice originally was $30, but with a 75% discount, it is now only $7.49. Now up next is Deep Rock Galactic. Deep Rock Galactic originally was $30, but with a 70% discount, it is now only $9. Deep Rock Galactic is a game in which you and up to 3 other friends get to play in first-person shooter fashion as dwarves living on this procedurally generated cave. What I really love about Deep Rock Galactic is that you get to work together as you go about, whether it is digging, whether it is exploring, whether it is fighting merciless hordes of enemies, as well as whether it is gathering resources. It is just a really fun co-op experience where you get to just embark on this adventure while exploring those different areas that just feels like space, some place where you normally will not be able to explore in real life. It's just really fun, really chaotic, as well as it just brings about teamwork, brings about the excitement. And what I really love about Deep Rock Galactic as well is that due to its very non-linear gameplay is that you can easily pick up and drop whenever. So that is also something that's really cool for people like me who from time to time enjoy co-op games but primarily love to play single-player games. Deep Rock Galactic Survivor is just a perfect game to play. So yeah, if all this sounds really interesting to you, definitely check out Deep Rock Galactic on the Steam Deck. Once again, Deep Rock Galactic originally was $30, but with a 70% discount, it is now only $9. Now, up next is Hoa. Hoa originally was $15, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $7.49. Hoa is a beautiful puzzle platformer where you get to play as Hoa, who is a little fairy, and guide her back to her hometown where it all began. What I really love about Hoa is that there is a beautiful soundtrack that brings about the mood and vibe of the game, as well as there are also cute characters where you get to meet on the way back to your hometown to where it all began, as well as there are also those different puzzles that you get to solve where some of them may be a bit annoying, but they are also at the same time not impossible as long as you put your heart and mind to want to solve those different puzzles. What I love about Hoa as well, it just brings about this jolly-filled, relaxing vibe as if I'm in nature, just going on this hiking adventure, and where it is just animated. It just kind of feels as if somebody just filmed my adventure into the wild and then just made an animated version of me, and as well as an animated version of the nature and the surroundings and whatnot. It is just a game that is just really chill, really relaxing, as well as it just brings about this vibe of just coziness with all these kind of things blended in and the music to top it off as well. So yeah, if you really love these type of hand-painted drawn art, as well as you love these type of games where there is just these jolly characters, definitely check out Hoa on the Steam Deck. Once again, Hoa originally was $15, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $7.49. Now, up next is Quantum Break. Quantum Break originally was $40, but with an 80% discount, it is now only $8. Quantum Break is a third-person action-adventure shooter where you get to not only shoot hordes of enemies, but where each type has different behaviors where you have to learn and adapt. And what's cool about Quantum Break is that I really love how you get access to time powers. And time powers are basically powers where you get to manipulate time to either accomplish different tasks or take down different enemies. Two of my favorite time power gameplay mechanics is Time Stop as well as Time Echoes. In Time Stop, you get to freeze different enemies in time where they get locked in a bubble, and you get to shoot at them with no mercy and disrespectfully, and and kill them. And where time echoes, you get to replay certain instances in the events of the game where you either number one need to solve the puzzle in order to progress in the game because currently there are obstacles that block your way, or number two, you will also be able to use time echoes where you basically be able to learn about past events of the story of Quantum Break. And also another thing about this game too is that there is story junctions. There are plenty of different junctions that basically affect the plot of the game. There are multiple endings as well. So yeah, if you're looking for a third-person action-adventure shooter where there are a whole bunch of different enemies to fight, as well as there is also a story where you can experience multiple endings, if you love all that, definitely check out Quantum Break on the Steam Deck. Once again, Quantum Break originally was $40, but with an 80% discount, it is now only $8. Now, up next is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Now, as far as The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt goes, both the standard as well as the complete edition are all on sale. As far as the standard edition goes, it originally cost $40, but with a whooping 90% discount, it is now only $4. Now, as far as the complete edition, it includes both the Blood and Wine DLC as well as the Heart of Stone DLC on top of the base game Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. So that is something that's all coming together, which originally was $50, but with a 80% discount, it is now only $10. So in my opinion, if you are somebody who hasn't experienced the Witcher 3 Wild Hunt yet, definitely pick up the complete edition. It will just cost you a few dollars more and it's only $10. What I really love about it is that there is a vast open world where it is really lively. There's a variety of the busy city life where you can do a lot of different things, as well as there's also wild areas flooded with danger. There's a variety of these different stuffs in this vast open world. In this game, you get to play as a monster slayer known as the Witcher, and where you can travel on foot, by boat, by horse, just as a few examples. And there are tons of side things to do, such as horse racing, boxing, romancing females after completing certain quests, as well as you get to visit different blacksmiths where you get to craft better weapons. If you love these type of open world games where there's a lot of things to do and there's a vibrant world to explore, as well as there is a great story and whatnot, definitely check out The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt on the Steam Deck. Once again, as far as The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt goes, both the standard as well as the complete edition are all on sale. As far as the standard edition goes, it originally cost $40, but with a whooping 90% discount, it is now only $4. Now, as far as the complete edition goes, it includes both Blood and Wine as well as Hearts of Stone DLCs on top of the game itself, The Witcher 3. And with all that included, it originally cost $50, but with an 80% discount, it is now only $10. So in my opinion, if you are somebody who hasn't gotten your hands on The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, definitely pick up the complete edition for a few bucks more. It is only $10. Now up next is Pizza Tower. Pizza Tower originally was $20, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $10. Pizza Tower is a platforming game where you get to play as a pizza chef who must do all it takes to climb up a tower and prevent the destruction of his pizza restaurant from his villain. What I love about Pizza Tower is the chaos where you are on your feet fighting various enemies, sliding through breakable barriers, dashing, jumping, finding secrets, and many, many more. The game is divided into 5 floors with 4 levels and a boss level in each floor. What's challenging about Pizza Tower is once you reach the end of levels, you will activate what's called
pizza time,
in which you must rush back to the beginning of the level within a time limit, as failing to make it back on time will cause you to have to retry the level. So yeah, it could be really challenging and frustrating, especially if you are somebody who is not really good at these fast-paced platformer games. But if you love platformers where you can imagine becoming a kid again and where chaos ensures in a fun and lighthearted way, flooded with laughter, definitely check out Pizza Tower on the Steam Deck. Once again, Pizza Tower originally was $20, but with a 50% discount, it is now only $10. Now up next is Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition originally was $40, but with a whooping 75% discount, it is now only $10. Elder Scrolls V Skyrim is an open world RPG game that is really iconic, really popular, really classical, and it is really timeless. In this game, you can choose between whether or not you want to play in a first person or a third person perspective, and you get to explore an environment that's inspired by Scandinavia, and where in Skyrim there is a diverse variety of races in which you can choose from, as well as there is a variety of various terrains such as the wilderness, such as the towns, such as the various dungeons, the caves. The possibilities are just endless. It is just a beautiful world to explore and engage with, and as well as there are also a variety of various enemies. It is just something that is just really remarkable and really fun, as well as really engaging, in which you can spend so many hours there to dive deep and you will not feel bored. So yeah, if this all sounds great to you, definitely check out Elder Scrolls V Skyrim on the Steam Deck. Once again, Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition originally was $40, but with a 75% discount, it is now $10. Now up next is Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Ori and the Will of the Wisps originally was $30, but with a whooping 75% discount, it is now only $7.49. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a sequel to Ori and the Blind Forest. What I love more about Ori and the Will of the Wisps is that there are side quests that you get to engage, because believe it or not, Ori and the Blind Forest, there is no side quest. Yes, there is exploration and there is story progression, but there is no side quest to do in the game. The only reason to go back to a certain part in Ori and the Blind Forest is to just discover certain areas in which you cannot access before, because at the time that you encounter those different areas, you don't have the skills to get into those areas. So the only reason to go back to certain areas in Ori and the Blind Forest is to access certain parts of the map which you could not access before. However, in Ori and the Will of the Wisps, there's another incentive to go back to certain areas, and that is to engage in those different side quests. I believe those side quests, they bring about those different values in the game. As well as what I really love about how there's those different side quests is because it just feels that Ori gets to engage more with the community in the forest. It just makes me feel as if Ori is being more intentional with the residences in the environment. It's just one of those type of little things that just really matter a lot more, in my opinion. As well as what I really love about Ori and the Will of the Wisps compared to Ori and the Blind Forest is that Ori and the Will of the Wisps, it is also heavily reliant on auto-saving. When you progress in the game, there will be that icon at certain points where it shows that the game is saving, and that is something that I find really valuable as well, because I'm somebody who is not that great at gaming. I do love games a lot, that's why I make this channel, but at the end of the day, I have to admit that I'm not the best at gaming, so having autosave features is just something that is really practical for me, because I don't want to be where if I pass a certain part of the game that is just really challenging and I forget to save, then I have to redo the challenging part of the game again. I mean, that was one of the things that I had struggled with Ori and the Blind Forest. There are certain challenging parts of the game where I passed and I forgot to save, and where I had to redo the challenging part. So I'm really glad that Ori and the Will of the Wisps, there is also this part of auto saving where, you know, if I mess up and I forget to save, then sometimes there could be a chance where it auto saves and I don't have to redo certain parts. But anyways, another thing that I really love about Ori and the Will of the Wisps is the introduction to spirit trials, where you get to race against a spirit, and the goal is to beat it and to receive spirit light, which is the currency for you to buy different important necessities in the game. As well as what I really love is the inclusion of combat shrines, which you get to fight waves of enemies, and where you also receive those different rewards that will help you along your journey to progress in the game. Even though I praise Ori and the Will of the Wisps and I love Ori Ori and the Will of the Wisps so much better than Ori and the Blind Forest, but I have to warn you, what I really don't like about Ori and the Will of the Wisps is that the story, in my opinion, is not as inspirational as Ori and the Blind Forest, just as a heads up. Aside from that, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is just better in every other way, so honestly, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is just a much better, much polished game, in my opinion. But anyways, if you really love these type of Metroidvania platformer games where there is a beautiful world to explore as well as an amazing soundtrack and where there is a lot of things to do and whatnot and also interesting boss fights, definitely check out Ori and the Will of the Wisps on the Steam Deck. Once again, Ori and the Will of the Wisps originally was $30, but with a 75% discount, it is now only $7.49. Now up next is Middle-earth Shadow Bundle. Middle-earth Shadow Bundle includes both Middle-earth games, aka Shadow of War, as well as Shadow of Mordor. As well as in this Middle-earth Shadow Bundle, it also includes the important DLCs from both games. Now the bundle originally was $70, which I already believe is totally worth it as I spent more than 70 hours playing both games combined as well as the DLC, and I enjoyed every second of playing. I never felt bored or felt like the gameplay was grindy. But now with a 90% discount, it is only $7. What I love about Shadow of Mordor is how you get to fight those different enemies, as well as there is a beautiful place to just explore that is heavily engaging if you're somebody who loves Lord of the Rings and loves The Hobbit, as well as there are also different side quests that really enhance the story, as well as a beautiful soundtrack that wraps everything that I mentioned together. But what I really am glad about Shadow of Mordor, what I really think really stands out compared to other beautiful open world games, is the Nemesis system. In Shadow of Mordor, you get to track down different Uriks and where you get to defeat those different captains, and where if you defeat those different captains, it will cause the captain's goons to be weakened. However, if you get killed by the captains, then it will cause the Uriks to level up. So it is something in which you gotta prep, you gotta strategize before you take on a captain, because if you keep dying, it may come to a point where the game will be very much unplayable because the enemies get so high level and you are completely under leveled and you cannot play the game anymore, and unfortunately you have to start over. So that is something that you do not want to do. So yeah, Shadow of Mordor is a really great game for people like me who are Lord of the Rings enthusiasts. It is something that is just really great and really subversive. Now as far as Shadow of War goes, I love Shadow of War so much more than Shadow of Mordor. It is just the bigger brother to Shadow of Mordor, with a much bigger world to explore, a much bigger world to roam, as well as different enemies to fight, as well as there are also more side quests, and as well as there's also a bigger and better variety of weapons. That's what I really love about Shadow of War. But what I am impressed mostly about Monolith Productions is buffing the Nemesis system in Shadow of War. What I love about the Nemesis system in Shadow of War is that enemies are able to be dominated. When dominating an enemy, the enemy can be sent to eavesdrop different war chiefs and bring back intel to Talion. As well as what's cool about being dominated is that those enemies, they can continue to be your friend or later on betray you and become a foe depending on how you treat them. Like for example, if during a battle you decide to protect them in the battle, they will continue to be your friend. But if you abandon them, then they will become your foe. So this is a game in which it is just so much more polished than Shadow of Mordor. It really feels as if Shadow of War, the gameplay side of things, is what Shadow of Mordor was meant to be. So yeah, that is something that is just so remarkable. If you are somebody who loves Lord of the Rings and Hobbit, you will love Shadow of War. If you are somebody who just loves open world games and the action side of things, you will love Shadow of War. It is just a game that I believe is just meant for everybody. Definitely check out Shadow of War on the Steam Deck! Now up next is Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley originally was $15, but with a 40% discount, it is now only $9. Stardew Valley is an iconic farm simulator. In this game, you get to create a character where he or she inherits the land and a house in a small village called Pelican Town, which is located in, you know it, Stardew Valley. What's cool about this game is that you get to engage in your imagination of what life ought to be as if you are working in the farmland, whether it is going fishing, whether it is cooking, whether it is crafting, or exploring procedurally generated caves to fight off various enemies, which are also adorable by the way, and also collect those various resources to tame your farm and to live your life for the better. What I also love about Stardew Valley is you get to engage and make various friends with different NPCs in town, kind of like how if you lived on a farmland, everybody kind of just becomes friends with everybody and everybody's just friendly and whatnot. It just brings about that kind of vibe, this kind of farm life simulation. As well as what I also love about Stardew Valley is that you also will be able to plant different crops, which is also realistic as well, because as you consume the different foods, it will grant various buffs which help you to be more energized and tackle on certain activities throughout the day. So that is something that's also really cool as well and very realistic as well. It really paints the life as if you are living in a small village in the countryside. So yeah, if you really love farm simulation games where your imagination is just endless, where you create the story of the game and where you imagine to be somebody who is living in a farm-like village, definitely check out Stardew Valley on the Steam Deck. Once again, Stardew Valley originally was $15, but with a 40% discount, it is now only $9. Now up next is Bramble the Mountain King. Bramble the Mountain King originally was $30, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $6. In Bramble the Mountain King, you play as Ollie, who discovers that his sister is missing at night due to his sister wandering out into the woods and not coming back. So you, as Ollie, being a great brother, you decide to embark on this journey to hopefully find your sister and at the same time bring her safely back home. Now, as you journey out into the woods by yourself, you manage to find your sister. However, as you and your sister is on the way back home, your sister gets captured once again by a ferocious, mysterious creature, and so you as Ollie cannot go home just yet, but have to go find your sister and save her from the creature before it is too late. What I really love about Bramble is how there is an awesome narrator. As you progress in the game, there are times where the narrator will just say a interesting dialogue where it sounds as if it is somebody like your mom who is reading a bedtime story to you who is a little kid. It just kind of has this type of aesthetics, and I just feel like that is just really artistic and where it is just something that is just often overlooked and also really nice. As well as what I really love about Bramble is how as you go about where you have to go into those different houses to solve these different puzzles, there are also interesting booklets, these optional interesting booklets that you can read where you learn about those different enemies in the game, their backstory, and that is something that I also feel like it brings about this extra spice because it teaches me that potentially hurt people, that even though there were those enemies that are trying to harm Ollie, but at the same time I can sympathize with them, their behavior of why they want to hurt Ollie because they themselves have been hurt in the past. But another thing that I have to really warn you about Bramble is that when you start out the game, it may seem as just a fun, jolly adventure game, but as you go farther into the game, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but I have to warn you is that it starts getting very dark and very horrific. So that is something to really note for if you are somebody who is very sensitive to horror games, then Bramble may not be for you. You might get nightmares just as a heads up because it could be pretty scary later on in the game. In the beginning, not so much, but later on it will be more scary, so you might have to avoid that. But if you are somebody who doesn't mind horror games like I do, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King because there is so much to the game and where it speaks to me in many different ways. Another thing that I have to also warn you is that Bramble could be frustrating because in in Bramble the Mountain King, there is no health bar. If you get hit by an enemy, you're dead. If you land in some spikes, you're dead. There is no grace as far as being hit, so that is something to really also keep in mind, that it is not easy. But anyways, if those things don't bother you, if you really love these type of games where there is a very big sense of emotion tied behind it, as well as where a game that it can speak to you in many different ways, as well as if you love these type of games where there's a beautiful soundtrack and a beautiful presentation, definitely check out Bramble the Mountain King on the Steam Deck. Once again, Bramble the Mountain King originally was $30, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $6. Now up next is Remnant from the Ashes. Remnant from the Ashes originally was $40, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $8. Remnant from the Ashes is a Souls-like RPG shooter game set in a futuristic world that is extremely devastating, being dominated by those evil creatures known as the Root. So you and those different players, it is your job to defeat the Root. What I really love about Remnant from the Ashes is that you get to equip 3 different weapons. You get to equip 2 firearms as well as 1 melee weapon, which is something that I really love. It just really gives more varieties on how to play the game. There's more options as far as how you want to fight those different enemies. And what I really love about this game as well is that it is a randomly generated world, in the sense that if you and up to 2 other friends, if you guys die and later come back to the same part of the world, there is also some unpredicted things that could potentially happen. There could be different enemies that spawn. But what I have to say is that since it is considered a Souls-like RPG shooter game, it can be really challenging as well. The different enemies, the different bosses, the different types of enemies, they are very punishing and very merciless as well. So it is really important when encountering those different enemies is that you really gotta learn how to be quick as in quick in reflexes, as well as really quick in strategizing and adapting to the different ways those different enemies fight. Because if you are too slow, you will easily die. So if you are somebody who is looking to play a game in which it is really fun, really challenging, as well as really chaotic, definitely check out Remnant from the Ashes on the Steam Deck. Once again, Remnant from the Ashes originally was $40, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $8. Now up next is Hades. Hades originally was $25, but with a 70% discount, it is now only $7.49. Hades is a roguelike dungeon crawler game where you play as Zagreus, who is the son of, you know it, Hades. Since Hades is a very unforgiving father and Zagreus is tired of his father, he decides that he wants to escape the underworld. So you as Zagreus, you have to do all it takes to escape the underworld in order to get to the mortal world, in order to reside with your mother. What I really love about Hades is the hack and slash element. I love just going in there and fighting various hordes of enemies, as well as what I really love about Hades is also the different interesting boss fights that you got to do in order to progress in the underworld. So that is something that is also very interesting and very engaging, as well as really love the soundtrack of Hades. The music just brings about the vibe of the atmosphere of the game and what's going on in the game. So yeah, if you really love a beautiful indie roguelike dungeon crawler game, definitely check out Hades on the Steam Deck. Once again, Hades originally was $25, but with a 70% discount, it is now only $7.49. Alright, last but not least, Greak Memories of Azur. Greak Memories of Azur originally was $20, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $4. Greak Memories of Azur is a beautiful platformer where your goal is to lead 3 siblings to help them flee from the land of, you know it, Azur. What I really love about Greak Memories of Azur is the amazing soundtrack, as well as the interesting bosses that you get to encounter, as well as a beautiful world that is fully immersive that I get to explore, in which as I go about playing the game, it makes me feel as if I'm accompanying the three siblings, that the three siblings are my friends, and that we are going on an interesting adventure while going about hiking and whatnot. As well as what I really love is that as you go about playing Greek Memories of Azur, there are also really interesting characters to meet, as well as different puzzles to solve in which you need to do in order to progress in the platformer game. As well as, more importantly, what I really love about this game is that you also get to control all three of the characters simultaneously. And why I say that it is really cool is that it really makes me feel the bond among the three siblings, that they are in the adventure together, in which they do not separate. However, with all that in mind, I have to warn you that the game could be a bit tricky because they live and die together. What I mean by that is that in case you are fighting a specific tough enemy or a tough boss, if one of them happens to die, guess what? The mission fails and you will have to start over with the boss fight. Start over from where you left off. So that is something that could be potentially a challenge, in which you will have to pay attention to all three of the siblings at all times in order to progress in the game and survive in helping them flee from the land of Azur. That is something in which it is really important. So yeah, if you really love an emotional platformer game where there are interesting characters as well as an amazing soundtrack and where you will have to be on your toes at all times, definitely check out Greak Memories of Azur on the Steam Deck. Once again, Greak Memories of Azur originally was $20, but with a whooping 80% discount, it is now only $4. Alright friends, these are 20 great games that cost $10 or less in the Steam Winter Sale of 2025. Let me know in the comment section below, are there any games in which you picked up in the Steam Winter Sale in which I did not recommend on this list, and in which you recommend me to check out? We'll love to discuss. And as always, if you love gaming discussions, gaming reviews, gaming lists, and everything related to PC handheld gaming, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you really love this video, please hype this video. It will help the YouTube algorithm to recommend this awesome content to other people that are potentially interested. But anyways, my name is Joey from Nomadic Gaming Guild, and as far as scheduling goes, I try to post on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time and occasionally on Fridays, though right now with the holidays and whatnot, I'm gonna be sticking to posting on Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time, and once the new year is passed, we will resume to the old schedule of posting at Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. But anyways, with all that being said, game on!